The following is a fan-based review and is owned by Toei Incorporated in Bandai. We claim no ownership to the material we are discussing and is based on pure opinion.
Alright everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Tokucast, episode 5 with Kamen Rider Amazon and Kamen Rider Amazons.
And today we have a special guest joining us for this episode, a friend of ours from college who also enjoys tokusatsu and all the shows. Everybody welcome Jacob.
Hi, hey everybody.
This is
usual,
Marcus.
And I'm Matthew as usual. So, where are we going to start with Amazon today?
Well, we might as well go ahead and start with the actual show. Preliminary thoughts before we really start to get into this.
Going into it, I was kind of excited because I've heard all of the things about Amazon. It was canceled due to excessive gore and violence, which it
definitely has.
It earned that. It definitely earned that. But when I really got into the show, I was kind of disappointed.
You were very underwhelmed?
Yeah.
It is kind of underwhelming, but at the same time, I really appreciated the back-to-basics nature of it. The way it's one rider, he's got one finisher, one costume, no power-ups, and it is a very back-to-basics approach. And
all of the classic Kamen Riders have been like that we've been
true enough, but this is the first one that I've seen. I haven't watched V3 or any of the other older ones. So.
Not to mention, this is the first one where we don't end up getting any of the previous riders showing up in the show.
That's a good point.
And this is also the first rider that isn't based off a bug specifically.
Yep, he's based off of plethora of things.
Not just that, but one of the things I love about him is he's basically Creature from the Black Lagoon, but a superhero.
Basically.
And it flows over into his design, but also his character as a whole, and that was one of the things that I like the most about this show.
No one can really agree what Amazon's look is based on.
It's based on like a piranha, lizard.
A lizard.
And I also heard...
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
That was
At least that's what I see.
That was what the Sun Vulcan film.
Manga.
God.
You stabbed the heart, didn't you?
Alright, but just to start off the show, I mean...
The opening was... I skipped it every time. I'm sorry.
I didn't like... I like the ending.
I skip the opening every time as well.
Yeah, I like the ending of the opening.
One of my biggest complaints with this show is when you hear Amazon and it sounds really hype, and then the actor is Amazon,
and then you hear Amazon,
and it makes your ears bleed a little bit.
It does.
Really does.
And it's not just that, but every sound effect made by either Amazon or the monsters for the first several episodes is echoed to an extreme level.
It is.
And it's very, very irritating. Like Matt, you said you watch most of the episodes in the morning.
Yeah, before work. And I'm going to tell you this right now, whoever's listening. Hearing Q at 7:30 a.m. when you've only been up for 20 minutes makes you hate the day already.
It's pretty true.
Especially when it's echoed to an obnoxious degree.
And you have headphones in, so it's going straight into your ears.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But getting into the actual show, at least for Amazon, we had the first episode of Man or Beast, the cool guy who came from the jungle.
Mm.
Now that's a lie.
That is a lie. It was really
well, he did come from the jungle.
That's not the part I'm talking about. Cool guy from the jungle? Yeah. That is a lie.
Well...
Don't lie to me, Kamen Rider.
But this one ends up starting off very differently because it starts off with a ritual being done on this, I guess, young
ritual
man.
Surgery. Let's use the right term. His arm has an incision in it, open for the entire world to see, as metal sticks and prods are putting into his arm to put this bracelet on him. Again, 7:30 in the morning. That shit is scarring.
So yeah, ritual.
Also, hey kids, come watch this new show.
A surgery be performed on a man's arm.
But getting back to the cool guy from the jungle, I can see why he would be considered cool, because even reaching far into today, I don't think we've had a Kamen Rider like Amazon to this day.
We haven't.
Where he is very feral. He doesn't speak Japanese in this case, but
he speaks it in like very very.
He does, but you know it is that like Tarzan wild man appeal, and I can see why a little kid would think, oh hey yeah Tarzan, he's pretty cool, and this is Tarzan as a superhero fighting monsters, and he turns into the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I think that's kind of cool.
Great idea on paper.
On paper, yes.
Execution could have been worked on.
Yeah.
It was also 1974.
True enough.
So this guy, his name, by the way, is Daisuke Yamamoto, who we don't end up finding out his actual name until much later into the show. Actually, I don't even think we find this out at all in the show itself, which is sort of a weird thing. We don't find this out until just doing some research. We don't find out his name until Stronger. But he ends up being performed a surgery ritual thing on him by an old guy who, as soon as it ends up being, the ritual ends up being completed, the old guy dies. And he's like, before he died, he's like, go to Japan and meet this guy. And he was like, okay.
And he just jumps on the first boat that he finds. He doesn't, how he knows it's going to Japan is beyond me.
Yeah. And, I mean...
We're just left to assume that he taught him some basic Japanese.
Yeah, that's really all you can assume in this case. But he ends up getting to Japan, and these two guys end up showing up who he was supposed to meet there.
And they immediately die.
They immediately
die in a very violent way, too. That's because I might be getting a little ahead here, but Gedon, the big bad guy for the first half of the...
About 10 episodes.
First half of the show... They need human blood in order to survive. And we graphically see a person having their blood harvested from them.
I'm so glad we invited him to this, because at this point I got used to all the violence from the 70s Sentai and Kamen Rider. It's nice to hear somebody else experiencing it for the first time.
It was nice to experience it for the first time. And
what was it, Live Man and Changeman? Can he just be on those episodes where, like, here on the minority token, white person, black person, blow them up?
That's basically
it happens.
Yeah, thank you, Live Man. We'll get there.
Yeah, we end up, the very first monster that we end up seeing from Gedon is the Spider Beastman. Now, of course, the spider, and the next episode is a bat. So that's been a thing ever since the first Kamen Rider, where those first couple of enemies are always based on these two.
Yeah.
And I just remembered it's also then reflected in Amazons. The first one was a spider monster, and then a bat monster.
And one of the Amazon's crew, like one of them turns into a mole.
Yeah.
Like Amazon's mole beastman friend. Still a pushover, still a whiny little baby, but hey, what are you gonna do? We're getting ahead of ourselves.
But the thing is, it's like after these first two episodes, Amazon always ends up being the one to fight them. Not to mention the fact that his finishers are sort of insane. He just basically chops off body parts.
I really like Amazon's fighting style. I love how...
Well, his fighting style did kind of progress the later the show went on.
It did.
At the very beginning, he was very feral.
Yeah, but that's what I liked about it. It's so feral, and it's, he's got those nice claws that he can just slash at people, and he bites them with that big old beak that he's got, and it's really cool.
And then he rips their heads off.
Yes, and it's great.
But it's like... On these first couple of ones, it's never him that, like, at least for the spider and bat, he doesn't end up being the one to destroy them. That ends up going to Gedon. Gedon is that person who just ends up, if you fail him, you die.
Yeah.
Which
is a very, I like that. It shows that he is intimidating. It shows that he doesn't just sit on his ass and tells people to do things.
And that's basically really all
he can do is sit. Because 10 faces...
Well, he can fly, too, so...
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to bring this up.
He's also like one of the first things you see in the first episode is the beast, the
monster,
10-head demon.
The 10 faces monster could have been
10-faced demon Gorgos.
Could have been designed so much better. I think the reason why it was designed so huge and massive is that they put 10 people in there to put their faces through so they can
I love how in one episode there is a moment where it looks like the hole was a little too big for one of the actors' heads and you can see a blue denim shirt peeking through.
Yeah, you get a lot of that in Amazon.
We do.
True enough.
Like, there's that one episode where the monster gets his head sliced off and you see the hand.
I remember when we were in college, you guys told me you went to a History of Kamen Rider panel and they brought that scene up.
It was at Katsucon.
And I was waiting that whole time. I'm like, when am I going to see the hand push off the head? When am I going to see it? Sure enough, he's fighting the ant beast man. Get to Tedloda, and you can see the little hand pushing the little head off.
I was waiting for that myself.
And it was great.
Was it everything I was everything I
It was everything you described. For once you didn't oversell something.
Now,
thank you.
In episode 1 and episode 2, we end up meeting this kid, Masahiko.
Yes.
Let's point this out. His 7th birthday was actually on the day that this show premiered.
Oh.
And I saw a recent picture of him. He looks almost exactly the same. I mean, of course, he's taller. But
I would hope so.
Yoji Matsuda is the actor's name.
He turns 50 next year. And, I mean, it's just really weird, the fact that I just saw him as this kid. And then it's just like, I see this picture of him, as of last year. Just that much older. That weird juxtaposition between the two. But his character wasn't, like, I liked him a lot more than a lot of the other kid-based actors that we
Yeah.
have in some of the other
Okay,
shows.
I'll give you that much, but no matter what, kid characters in these shows always end up.
Well, you have the kid characters. They're normally there to represent their target audience. It's like, hey, this could be you fighting alongside Amazon and helping him
It
out.
was so much better in the Sentais though, or V3, where they had like the kid,
The Rider Scouts?
the Rider Scouts,
I thought they
which
were
were so.
I missed them. in
I
the show.
do like the kids that served a purpose other than token kid.
Yeah. It's just like, just weird going from that huge
And
amount of, like, huge group of kids who were just, like, so
Helpful.
bent on helping, defeat Shocker and Die Shocker and Destron.
And apparently that kid is also magic, from what I could tell, because I just remember this one scene where the doctor is driving his Jeep and it breaks down. He puts the hood up and he's working on it, and Amazon shows up with the kid. I think it's the episode episode 13, where Amazon starts speaking Japanese, and they're like, "Oh, you taught him," and then Monster shows up and he goes, "Oh, we gotta go help. Magically fix Jeep."
Yeah.
What?
That's basically how it works.
What?
Just noting some of the other things, at least from, going from Get On down, all of his warriors were female.
Yes, I noticed that this is the first time we have all female warriors who look like they just came from a roller derby.
They do.
Because they have so much tassels and... God, just
Fringing
tassels out the
tassels
wazoo.
galore.
Tassels out the
Holy
wazoo.
shit. I don't mean to curse this much, but Jesus Christ, I was choking on them.
They were basically just Beast Hyper before Beast Hyper existed.
I have expected one
And
of them
worse.
to go, oh yeah!
Seriously. And just like, where's your motorcycle? Speaking of which, Amazon's motorcycle.
Amazon's
Well,
bike.
before we get to that, because it takes a few episodes
Okay.
for us to get to that,
Ah.
we have to talk about the Mole Beast Man.
Yes.
Okay, I did actually... despite, the sound effects, I actually enjoyed his character.
I did too, because I really like the idea of a Kamen Rider being compassionate enough to spare a monster and befriend him.
And this is the first time that we get like an actual monster sidekick.
Yeah.
In any of the shows.
Thankfully, it's not something that dies with this show. It's done right now in Ghost, which I was really glad to see. So seeing this level of not every monster is a monster, like they did it, and they've done it in some Sentai that we've reviewed.
They've done it in multiple Sentai where the monster isn't evil; it's something in the causing him to be evil. I'm watching Time Ranger right now. They just had an episode about that.
Yeah, and it usually has something to do with the main villain, forcing them, threatening them.
And I like how the Mole Beast Man is also able to. He's like that kind of double agent. He can go in and spy on Get On and say, "Hey, Amazon, they're going to do
He's
this."
a mole.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's legitimately a mole. He can dig anywhere.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, you're
That
right.
was like the first thing. Oh, you're a mole. But
Oh, that makes sense.
Right over my head.
But it's just, I love the fact that we end up getting that character at least so soon in this show, because he shows up in episode 5.
Right.
And he's there for, most of the show, especially because this show only ended up being 24 episodes.
So useful.
And it was great. And I sort of miss the fact that we don't end up getting a character like that, at least who ends up transferring from the monster side to the hero side anymore.
Yeah.
We get that in like
occasionally.
some episodes, and like some of the more modern shows.
But none
they
of
don't
them stick around.
Yeah.
Like in Ghost, they did it, and he stuck around, but he recently just left. So he was around for maybe 10 episodes, and he didn't really do anything.
He really didn't.
Of course, what side characters do in that show?
It's true. But getting back on track with the actual show.
Sorry.
That's fine.
There's a lot of things that I really wish they did more with Get On, especially with this show being as short as it was. I felt like Get On didn't really end up doing much in his tenure.
With this show?
This show is incredibly repetitive.
It is.
And there's really no structure aside from, here is a monster. Amazon kills the monster.
I mean,
darn you, we're going to send another monster.
The whole thing with Get On is him trying to get the GG arm off of Amazon's arm. And he's never been able to, but it's just like...
He never was able
and
to.
The repetitiveness is just something that unfortunately comes with these common
It does, but it's especially noticeable in this one.
Yeah.
Because it's
Kamen Rider is usually not very guilty of this. That's usually more of a Sentai thing.
Yeah.
And you think... I guess it's not because they didn't know they were going to have so little episodes.
At the beginning.
Yeah, so they thought they would stick to the formula, especially since it's a new thing they're doing. New... Pretty much everything. New writer that doesn't have anything to do with the previous writers. New theme. New look. New dark tone to this.
Well, we'll put that one in quotation.
Dark as in violent.
Yeah, okay.
This new violent tone that they were trying to go for.
Right.
So I think they wanted to go back to basics.
Yeah. We didn't really mention him. We should have. Tobei Tachibana ends up coming back in this show.
Oh, yes, he does.
And he comes back in episode 2, because originally the guy who they killed off in the first episode was supposed to last a lot longer.
Yes.
That doesn't end up happening. And then they bring back, this character. It felt so weird because we didn't watch X because Kamen Rider X isn't subbed.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just, going from V3 to this, he felt like such a different character.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. He felt worse in the show. And that's not a good thing.
No.
I felt like in V3, Tobei Tachibana was always there to, be able to fight and try to do as much as he possibly could.
He had a very high I wouldn't say work ethic, but he had a very high sense of justice.
Yeah. And I feel like we're sort of missing that a little bit because he seems a lot more selfish in Amazon.
Well, but you also got to remember that this is not his show anymore. So coming from a writing standpoint, they can't make him stand out too much because then he takes away from the actual main character.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this show with, Amazon not really having much of a personality until much later. And that's just, there are a lot of... I feel like this show missed a lot because of what it was. They panicked, and you could tell that they panicked halfway, like, right around episode 10 after they were killing Gedon. Mm-hmm. They panicked hard.
Yeah.
Because they, our show's getting canceled.
Our show is getting canceled, and the villain designs, they all drastically change, and all of a sudden we get something that looks like your more typical Showa-era villain, as opposed to... I actually kind of appreciate what they did with the 10-headed beast, the 10-headed demon, sorry, but I really like it because it isn't really your typical Kamen Rider bad guy where it's a dude in a costume where it was for a lot of the Showa-era shows, and it really is this more fantastical monster which fits in with the whole theme that Amazon was going for.
And they were trying all this new stuff out.
Right.
They got canceled and they went, well, we've still got 14 episodes, we might as well just go back to basics, go back to what we know works at least to get this show done.
And they do. And that's how
unfortunate as it is.
Because, the one thing I really love, we're skipping over to episode 10 at this point, because that was the point that Gavin ends up getting killed.
Mm-hmm. And nothing happens in between.
And nothing happens in between. Every time Amazon ended up attacking one of the faces, they turned back to stone.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a weird, little aesthetically pleasing thing that
no, absolutely. That was a
I thought it was pretty cool.
If they remember to, and as long as, the costume in the prop, people remember to, okay, this face is now stone, and from this point on...
For the most part, I think they did.
Yeah.
I don't remember any really...
It's a very good idea, but that can also be mistake... Or, words are hard. Mistakes can be common and easy.
Yeah, and they sort of are in this show. And I sort of wish we didn't end up running into that as much, but we do. And, I'm not going to say that it's their fault, but yeah, they definitely could have tried.
But it is their fault.
It's their fault to a degree, but it's also the fault of the time period where they didn't have... It's
technological restraints.
Technological restraints. They had to do more practical effects as opposed to special effects, which Kamen Rider nowadays is very special effect heavy.
Yes.
Unlike Sentai, which they totally scrapped that.
And because now Kamen Riders will jump great distances using wires. Before they would just have them jump off the thing and then shown in reverse, which I swear to God... I saw a scene in Amazon where they were doing that, and you see the rocks roll up.
Yep. They did that multiple times.
Yeah.
And in a lot of the early Rider and Sentai, we ended up getting those a lot more. And, before we get into anything else, I do want to point out this, and I'm upset we had not mentioned it at all in any of our reviews. These sets are so big and different
than what we're used to seeing.
Than what we're used to seeing a lot of
the same places.
The same thing over and over and over again. And now we don't end up seeing that anymore. It's just
they're not the exact same, but rock quarry, beachside.
This place where they just end up having random pillars.
Uh-huh.
And
as opposed to, that place that was in this Sentai and this Rider and this other Sentai and this other Tokusatsu show. And
I noticed that, I keep bringing up Time Ranger because I'm watching it now, but I see we end up seeing that a lot more from this point after.
Yeah.
I think
the New Millennium kind of started that.
We started seeing a lot, especially, I've watched some episodes of Abba Ranger. There are a lot of repeated sets.
Yes.
Starting in the early thousands.
Yeah.
But it's in these earlier shows, we end up getting these huge spans of forest.
Yes.
And I remember that one episode of Bioman where they were fighting on top of a big dam and everything. Yeah. I thought that, and that, it's just, I really wish they kept the things that they were doing in those shows.
Yeah, but you also remember that with the more effects that they started coming in and the better costumes, I mean, they costed more, which means they had to save money somewhere, and I'm assuming it went with the sets.
And I'm so disappointed in that because we got some really dynamic shots in Amazon.
Yeah,
we did.
Just like those huge shots of just like, you see them from so far away.
I mean, and another victim of this was Hibiki. Remember, Hibiki started off in the...
completely in the forest.
And then after episode 32, where the entire show went to shit...
That's what happens when you change writers.
And you change everything.
Yeah, well, the writers changed and so on and so forth.
So, and it's just one of those unfortunate things that either happens because of Hollywood or because of money.
Yeah.
The two, by Hollywood, I mean...
Japanese Hollywood.
Japanese Hollywood.
Japanwood.
Japanwood. Tokyo Wood.
And this video's now getting taken down due to racism.
But going off for episode 14, this is when the Garanda Empire shows up. And we end up meeting... Geddon's arm is getting cut off by Amazon. And before he can go and take his Gaga armlet, that ends up being taken away by these guys in all black. The Kurojusha. And they work for the Geddon Empire. Yeah, and I thought that was just like a really weird thing, because we end up going from these minions who are all women to minions who are all men.
Yes.
I just thought that was like a weird little change that they had there. And I think that's something that they were just like, that is way too different.
Yeah.
Because
we go from the roller derby girls to, looking more like your classic Kamen Rider.
Yeah, we end up going from
older shows.
Destron to this, because we didn't watch X. And then we end up going basically back to Destron with all male and black. And I just thought that was just like a weird little thing that they ended up changing, basically for no reason.
Yeah.
But we end up meeting them, and we also meet the Great Emperor Zero. And we just saw him in something else. He was Mason in Bioman.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah, I thought he looked familiar.
I did too. I was like, wait, why do... Oh, yeah. But yeah, that was him. And I love the fact that a lot of the earlier shows, and we see some now, they end up reusing actors a lot.
I love it when they reuse actors. It's always just fun to see those faces again, because now, hate to go back, but Ghost is using Yellow Buster.
Yeah, she was in the most recent episode.
You also look at Kyoryuger, where they brought back, Boken Silver.
Dinah Black.
You mean Baldkin Silver?
Baldkin Silver, as you called him.
But
also Deca Yellow.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Deca Yellow was in it.
And, no, the best part about that is that they knew it was Deca Yellow, and they...
She played with it. She does her pose.
Yeah, they played with it. I love it when they do that. It's just those fun little Easter eggs are always fun to see.
Or you have somebody like Nao Nagasawa showing up in W.
Yeah.
She shows up in everything, though.
Yeah, she does.
But then we also end up having, B3, and he plays Mobile Ranger, and he also ends up playing Big One in Jekka.
So, right.
Yeah, and then we Kenji Oba, obviously.
Kenji Oba's the big one.
Motherfrackin' Oba.
And we do have to do Gavin. We have to do Gavin.
Oh yeah, we'll absolutely do Gavin eventually, but
I would love to do Gavin. I just want to see more Kenji Oba being Kenji Oba, doing Kenji Oba things. It's Kenji Oba. He's just the best. That's just a true fact of life.
This is a very true fact. He is awesome.
But
he is.
Actually, getting back to the show that we're talking about.
By the way, Amazon.
This is we end up getting to the Garanda Empire.
Yes.
And you can tell there's something always going on behind the scenes, because I'm just going to keep calling him Mason because I'm not going to call him anything. Mason is always going to be controlled by somebody.
Yeah.
You don't end up really, you end up getting this feeling of him not being, the one making all of these decisions. And then a few episodes in, we do end up getting it. I love the way that they also ended up going from one to the other, because they had that one monster, the last monster before Geddon that was defeated. They ended up bringing him to the Garanda Empire and transforming him to a totally different monster.
Mm-hmm.
I just like how they just did that. And I feel like we've seen that somewhere before, but I'm not 100% sure as to where. I can't remember right off the top of my head. I'm thinking a little bit of Go Busters, but I'm not 100% sure just yet. But I love the way that they just, they sort of slid into this one by using things that they already had. Instead of just, this is a completely new one. We're not going to give you anything that you knew before. They just brought a monster that they just defeated and just remade him into a whole new thing.
Right.
I love when they end up doing these little slide evolutions into something.
Yeah, yeah. Those are always fun.
Those are always extremely fun. And then these are when the costumes always end up changing a lot more too. These ones seem a lot more like, the classic Kamen Rider
Yeah.
ones.
And-
Except the ones for V3 where they're like, that knife. And then go from there.
Turtle Bazooka. What?
Turtle Bazooka was the best. You don't mess with Turtle Bazooka.
You paint him blue, it's a knockoff Blastoise.
I was going to say, that sounds like Blastoise.
Thank you. But going back to something I wanted to talk about, the bike.
I don't like
I like the front of the bike.
The
I like
front. The back,
big,
though.
those big ass fins sticking out the back.
terrible.
Those are kind of just. I feel like they would just get caught on
think,
everything.
That makes you think somebody drew that on a piece of paper,
Yeah, okay.
showed it to Toei, and they went, yes. What?
I feel like they looked at it and said, "Toy, this'll sell."
They looked at
they
it
didn't-
and went, everything else is somehow worse.
Yeah, and then they found out that it did.
Like, great for a toy. Like, they can make a toy out of that, but when you have to make it to the actual bike, just flapping around and
I know
shit.
the fins are like flopping all over the place.
Oh
I feel
my
like they
God.
would get caught on something and just rip off.
Oh, one thing that we haven't really mentioned, and this goes all the way through the rest of the show as well. When those monsters attack someone, they can be frightening as hell sometimes.
Yes.
I
And that's
remember
the point.
one, the sea anemone beast man, who would like make tentacles come out of the people's stomachs.
Yes.
And thank you.
I hated that. I just had to pause the episode and think about my life for a little bit.
I was too busy.
not
I was too busy just like hitting my head against the table, going, "Of course, Japan has to have tentacles
somewhere. That was just a weird episode.
Mhm.
But I noticed this in the earlier one, and we've mentioned this before. Especially this show, how brutal they end up getting when dealing with like the regular populace.
Right.
It's like we give you,
And it's not like what Sentai's been doing, which is just like, "Hey, I have an Uzi."
yeah, we're not even getting that like we did in Bioman.
People are melting.
People get melted.
People are
like
melting. People are getting tubes shoved into the back of their heads and having all their blood drained.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of exsanguination in this one.
Yes.
It earned its cancellation.
It did
Yeah.
earn its cancellation.
And then you got like Amazon with his, sharp claws and his biting abilities, just, ripping monsters
Which we
apart.
get back in
And there's just
Obito.
blue and green blood spurting everywhere.
What was it? What was it I was hearing in a review? It was like, how come as long as you change the color of the blood, it's fine? That did not work with this show.
That's true with a lot of things, though.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's still unbelievably violent.
Yeah.
But
Samurai Jack. Like Samurai Jack, it's
It's
all
oil.
robots that are getting cut up and it's black everywhere. But I'm like, you change that to red. This is the
would've been
bloodiest.
canceled so
This is the
fast.
bloodiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
and then come back to this Adult Swim.
Yep.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that.
We all are.
Then we end up getting, there are no real episodes that end up standing out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a definite
The problem, yeah.
Except the Japanese, there was that one episode where they go to visit this guy, a friend of Tobei Tachibana's. It's the Japanese dwarf flying squirrel beast man, where they just end up finding like random squirrels dead. Oh wait, I'm thinking of V3. But this episode also has squirrels.
But there's squirrels in this one too.
It's just like this is one of those weird things that just I love how they have the monsters end up being like sort of the same aesthetic, but they end up doing something different with it each time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's what we end up seeing with the spider and bat and I guess flying squirrel on this one. I just thought that was funny. But we also end up getting the imitation Amazon.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That whole episode with the salamander beast man who can sort of transform himself into Amazon for some strange reason that we don't get ever explained.
Because salamanders can transform.
That's true, but that was
Henshin.
yeah, it was fun. He never says that.
That's actually very
Yes.
true. Amazon never says Henshin.
He just says Amazon.
Very, very badly. Very
And-
badly. I didn't mind the posing. The
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mind
fun.
that either.
I didn't mind that. But my biggest question is, what is giving him his power? The belt or the arm bracelet?
Yes,
Damn it.
actually,
I don't know.
it's the belt in this case, or something within him.
I think it's kind of like I think the bracelet gives him his power, but the belt kind of helps him focus it.
yeah,
But
That's
it's never
that's a good way of
it's
thinking
never
about
really
it.
explained.
yeah.
It's
And
pretty.
That's
They
what
don't,
was
but also it's aimed at kids. I guess they just kind of assume them to be like, oh, look, you've
Yeah.
seen this before.
But that also makes me wonder: did they sell the belt as a toy, or did they sell the bracelet, or both?
I think they might have sold both.
both
As a
most
combo?
likely.
It might have been as a combo if you paid extra money for it, but they might have sold both separately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we end up getting to episode 23. This is when he finally ends up fighting Great Emperor Zero,
Right.
aka Mason, at the end of the show. That fight
Mason.
took a lot longer than I thought it would, because it seemed like a lot of Amazon's fights in the rest
Very
of the show
short.
are extremely short because
Yes.
Amazon just goes for the kill almost immediately.
Yes.
And
That's one of the things I liked
kill
about
or
him, though.
dismemberment or both.
yeah, and that,
Usually at the same time.
what was one of the funniest things, though, and this really made me think of Monty Python, is when he ends up chopping off his arm, and he's like, I'm fine, I got this, and then he just punches him in the face, and I was like, this is
Tis but a scratch.
Monty Python or Deadpool.
it was so great and so hilarious. I love when they do things like that, where, I don't know if Monty Python was out by this point, I think it might have been, or it might have been like 2
what
years
year
later.
was this?
It was in 74.
74. That was just one of those really funny things. I love when they do stuff like that. It's just like, it makes that final villain, especially because of the fact that Geddon did not seem like anyone who was, worth it. Also, the guy's name is Gorgos. Well,
Yes. Monty Python was 75.
Okay, so
was Holy Grail.
Yeah, but that was just one of those really weird things. He seemed like a much more strong. He was just extremely strong, and that really showed. Even though he was taking the cue from someone else, he was just so strong, and that he could.
That's just one of those things that these early seasons have been doing, is that the villain doesn't seem like he's that unkillable.
Mm.
Like with Battle Fever, where it's just like stab done.
You stabbed the heart, didn't you?
Oh my god. Let's not bring that back up.
Oh, come on.
That was just great.
Uh,
After they beat him, we end up getting the ruler, like the actual ruler, who ends up being the same one from Shocker, from Die Shocker, from Destron, from whatever X's was. It was
Bad guy.
This is the same guy who's just been controlling all of this. And the last time, well, not the last time, I'll say, but the next time we end up seeing him is with Stronger. Like, all of the writers end up fighting him at the end of the show to finally, get rid of this guy because he's just too much.
And let's not forget how gruesome the deaths were near the end, where he's fighting and Amazon tears his arm off and they're still fighting, and then he falls into the spike pit.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Fatality.
They did do a spike pit. That was basically Mortal Kombat before Mortal Kombat was Mortal Kombat.
I wonder if that's where somebody got the inspiration.
Doubt it.
Yeah, probably not.
Spike pits are just a thing.
Yeah,
but I'd like to think in my perfect world. It'd be nice to think.
I like how that's just a fact of life. Yeah, spike pits.
Spike pits. Friggin' everywhere. I got one right outside my door.
Sometimes I forget to jump. It's awkward.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
And then I lose a life.
Yeah, my life
Gotta
is
go
Dark
grind
Souls.
for coins again.
Oh, terrible. But he ends up beating him at the end of this pretty quickly because at this point he has the Gaga armlet. Which is one of those really weird things because if you notice, he doesn't have that anymore in any show after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the that is a legitimate power up. You never
did he have it?
Well, didn't
does he have it in Bad Rod War Genesis?
He gets it. He gets it as his final sword.
Yeah.
But it's like,
but he has both of them.
Yeah,
he's got both of them.
But it's like in any of the time he actually appears in any of the shows or movies, he only has one armlet.
Yeah,
and I'm saying here, why when that's just like a legitimate power up for you?
I mean,
you can say that about
a lot of things. Like why does like every complaint you ever have about every team up, including about Kabuto. Why doesn't he just go back in time and fix this?
Why doesn't he just kill everyone because we know he has the power to do it?
They have. We'll get to that when we talk about because they know they made Kabuto too overpowered.
Yeah, true enough.
It's also might be the armlet may not have been in stock or been in the storage room. They may have only had the original.
Somebody
costume.
lost it.
Yeah,
because I mean
that's what happened to the gill suit. The gill suit got water damage.
Yeah.
So they
and didn't
they CG it?
Yep, they always CG it now.
They can't just make
one
a new
of the time that we saw it.
They just can't make a new one.
Nope.
That doesn't make any sense though.
Like the original gill suit no longer, and we're talking about the gill suit from Agito, by the way.
Yeah.
That suit no longer exists because it got 2 water damage at one point.
I'm just saying, why not just make another one?
I have no idea. Don't ask me. But
can't be asked.
Because I think something like that also happened with the Power Rangers when they were doing Super Mega Force and all the.
Yeah, some of the other suits got damaged over time.
So yeah, it just may have been one of those things. Maybe
which is also really weird considering the fact that Toei has all of those suits.
Yeah.
Just ask Toei for them?
Basically, they're right there.
But you might have to pay Toei for that. They might not have the money.
Yeah, they were in New Zealand filming this. They could have gotten it. They're not that far.
Well.
But going back to actual Amazon, I feel like since we're at the end of the show, and let's get
right
to
there.
Characters.
What characters?
Exactly.
That's a good point. What characters?
Amazon himself doesn't.
My
really
least,
much
I swear, I was really disappointed in that last episode, mainly because the Amazon's on the boat going back, and the kid's like,
Yes!
"Do you have to leave?" And he doesn't say a word.
Nope, there are no words that come out of Amazon's mouth at the end of this.
And he's just like, "Bye."
I.
Bye, I'm on a boat.
He just seems like this nice guy.
Yeah.
Like he loves these people.
Suit.
And he's in a suit.
Yeah,
and he's like this
an
nice
all-white
guy.
suit.
And he doesn't say a freaking word.
That's the weirdest thing I had about the end of this show. You can tell how hard they panicked at this point because they didn't know how to end it.
They didn't know what to dialogue. They didn't know the dialogue to write.
Well, that's a
Would
good
you
thing that
rather
Amazon
it be Amazon staring off into the sunset with a title card that says, "Thank you, Amazon"?
or at the end?
Pretty much what it was. That's pretty much what it freaking was.
It's a little more closure than that. At least he
no,
is
because there's the old guy going, he'll be back if Japan specifically ever needs help.
Yep.
Well, Japan needed help a couple of times because he showed up later in other movies and such. So.
And just, this is just one of those random facts. They mention him along with the other writers in the Jakka Go Ranger team up.
Oh.
Do they really?
They mention him and
Really?
the rest of the writers because they were all in the same universe.
Yeah.
They were like, Amazon's fighting evil in the Amazon. Kamen Rider 1 is fighting evil in Australia. Kamen Rider 2 is somewhere in Europe.
I want to see that
in
movie.
America.
I mean, they also kind of do pertain to that with Kamen Rider 1 and how he shows up in Ghost and he's in some other country according to the subtitle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fighting evil.
Someone's
in his steroid.
I mean, they do
suit.
that basically all the time in all the Kamen Riders. Like, why can't they show up and help it any other time?
They're busy.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, like they actually say that as opposed to, the superheroes that we have in America, like Ant-Man. My first thought is to call the Avengers. Nah, you got this.
I mean, they sort of...
Tangent a little. In Ant-Man, they do kind of bring up why they can't bring the Avengers into this. But that's the first time anyone actually suggested, why don't we just call the Avengers?
And there was, 3 Marvel movies before that, between that and the Avengers, and you're just like, so...
Maybe more than that.
Tony Stark, you're having trouble. Why don't you call Captain America? No? Okay.
Yeah, but it's like they sort of end up playing with that in Black RX because the last 10 episodes, the other writers do end up showing up.
Yeah.
The other writers before
And
him.
it is the acknowledgement that they are, because they don't lose their powers, like in modern Sentai's or Power Rangers where they lose their powers or for some reason they can't transform anymore.
That's one thing I really do end up noticing. And a lot of the more
modern,
and I notice this in Power Rangers a lot more than I do in Sentai, because in Sentai it seems like they always do end up keeping their powers at the very end. Mm-hmm. They sort of play with that a little bit in Kyoryuger.
Sometimes.
But in Tokucast for an actual more specific reason.
Yeah.
Right.
But in Riders, they always end up keeping their powers unless they have to give it up for a reason. I think the only time they ever really do that is in O's. And
O's had a legitimate reason. They did it in Drive for the quote unquote reason of too much power would not disturb the balance. There's no longer a villain. There's no longer a powerful villain to fight. You no longer need this powerful asset. Which, by the way, if it's for law enforcement purposes, that's really bullshit.
Yeah. that is a good point.
I'm sorry. The shift cars would have been great, for patrolling and who's going to rob a bank when Drive's still on the prowl.
That's a good point. But
getting
to Amazon, the thing that we should be talking about throughout this show.
Right.
You're so bad about this.
We are sorry.
Let's get back into character.
Again, what character?
He doesn't have one. Because
No.
his motivation isn't really as strong as some of the other ones.
He's also very inarticulate, so he's not good at expressing what his motivation would be if he had one.
He doesn't get that until episode 13, and that's really problematic.
And that's over halfway through the show.
That is the halfway point. That's over halfway through the show.
There's 24 episodes.
But it's just Amazon was, since we watched V3 as our other Kamen Rider before this, going from someone who needed to do this because of revenge and retaliation and things like that against Destron for killing his family, Amazon seems so weak in comparison.
In terms of a character, yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
There's the stakes were not high enough
for it to really, feel like.
Because why was Amazon doing this?
Yeah.
Why did other than
somebody gave him a smack on the bum and told him go here?
Yeah. And I feel like that's just a failing of the show itself because it was so short. We didn't really get that, whole motivation thing. Apparently,
Right.
He crash landed into the Amazon. We got the picture of him as a baby.
He started off as George of the Jungle.
Yeah. I feel like if they could have done
or
that.
Tarzan?
Yeah.
Well, George of the Jungle was the plane crash.
Yeah. But
So?
still.
But it's just like, they could have had said something at some point during the show, like, Godon was the one who made
the plane crash.
The plane crash or something like that. I felt like that would have made it a lot more personal. We're missing that personal aspect of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't... Ghost gets killed by a Gamma at the very beginning of the show.
Yeah, the very first episode.
That's the whole thing that really starts.
Yes.
Drive ends up doing this because his partner got injured by the Great Slowdown when that happened.
And then they kind of forget about that for a while.
And they forget about that entire thing. Forza doesn't have one. Wizard technically died at the beginning of his show.
Technically. And they all have this reason.
Yeah.
Like, and even Oz, he really didn't have a reason to fight them, but he was doing what Ankh told him to, so Ankh would give her the brother's body back.
Yeah.
Right.
So they all have this reason or this motivation. Amazon's just like, I'm here! Q. That's it.
That's basically his entire character. And that was just such a really strong failing.
I think out of all the Showa era writers, this is the one that I want to be remade most of all.
Which it is. Which is a perfect way to say
it. I mean, like, all right, fine.
No, we're not getting there yet.
Okay, good. But that being said, I think it would be a good remake if you did, discounting Amazon's, and if you did keep it more kid-friendly.
A remake as opposed to a reboot?
Yes, a remake. You mean like a remake in the form of like the first or the next? Where they
but less sucky.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I think if you did give it more episodes, give it more time to grow, and you gave it time to develop, I think you do have something you could really make a great show with.
And then we got this.
Yes, and we got this instead. But that's why I think it'd be good for a remake.
Yeah, it really.
It was also just a bad time period to have a bad time period and a bad place to air it for that violent tone they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think when they decided to do a reboot show on the Amazon website, they decided to do Amazon because it was somewhere they could really put Amazon in a place where he could
be himself,
be everything they wanted him to be violent, be depressing, and God, that show has a lot of that.
But it's just like going from, especially because we're going from Amazon to Stronger, which is a little bit more lighthearted, but it's a lot more personal. It seems like they fix a lot of the problems that they had with Amazon and Stronger. Yeah. And then we're also going to Go Ranger at the same time. So it's just like a lot of things end up happening with these shows that we sort of, we end up seeing them working on it the further along that we end up going.
Yeah.
And as you said, we end up seeing that when we go from Bio to Changeman.
Yeah.
And, oh God, that show will be great when we get to that next time.
Yeah. Because now, at that point, like we were saying in earlier episodes, the episodes of Sentai episode times had to get shorter. Mm-hmm. So they had to focus less on the villain of the week and more on actual plot. Yeah. So the quality of the shows got immensely better.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to doing Changeman next time.
Yep. We don't really end up focusing on side characters. Tobei Tachibana, he wasn't bad, but he could have been more V3 him than Amazon him. Amazon him was a lot more selfish in, just regards to the show, especially coming from V3 where he was, so in charge to this where he's just basically literally relegated to a side character.
Yeah,
he was never really that prevalent to the plot except for giving him the jungler. Yeah. And then, Masahiko was fine. Mm-hmm. I thought for a kid character, he felt immensely useful, even though, he's definitely not going to be anywhere as useful as the Rider Scouts. He still felt like...
He was fine.
A major plot point. And oh God, I remember some of the times that, they captured him and he was screaming and they felt so real. I just didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my God.
Oh dear, that
they can stop. But yeah, Amazon...
It's another one of those shows that had a lot of potential that was not utilized properly.
Mm-hmm. Like Hibiki. But final thoughts?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Hibiki got to, about the halfway point, and then it started getting bad.
For a variety of reasons, which we'll get to when we start talking about it.
Final thoughts of Amazon would be decent show on paper, executed poorly, 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, same. Lots of potential. Really like the costume. Really like his fighting style. I think Amazon is an interesting lead, but given the restraints that they had with both the time period and the impending cancellation, there just wasn't enough to do with it.
Yeah, it's just so much could have been done. Speaking of so much could have been done, You know what's also a good thing that got done? Amazons. See, that's a better segue.
Not really a better segue.
Not that it's a better segue. Just no.
I love this show.
I am the complete opposite.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Get into
Amazons.
Amazon. Yes. Let's open our Amazons.
Yes.
As the show's catchphrase says.
It doesn't work as well.
No, it doesn't work at all. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
It doesn't work nearly as well as Flies.
Open your eyes for the next Flies.
That was the greatest.
Anyway,
Amazons starts off in a city where these group of soldiers calling themselves
mercenaries.
Well, but they're mercenaries, but they're under the guise of exterminators.
Yes.
Under the Nozama Pharmacy Company.
Yeah, where they go into this house where a guy has apparently been. Or he hasn't been killed. He apparently was. No, sorry, it was a hotel.
Yeah.
A hotel
was
was one of the guests was a monster.
A spider monster.
A spider monster, as we were talking about earlier, and he ate all the guests. And their job is to go find it, they gave it a nice little scoring system, which I thought was kind of fun. Of it's a B rank, it's worth this many points. If you get enough points, you get a bonus.
This is how much money that we end up getting per the points that we end up bringing.
Mm-hmm. I liked that. I liked that concept.
That's kind of that I'll agree.
And the tacticalness and watching them work. And I like the guy who's always the driver, always has the sniper rifle. Mm-hmm. He was really cool. And they go fight, and one of them is actually a monster too. He's the mole. So they're still dealing with that tradition.
Right, we didn't talk about the end of the mole in Amazon.
One is a mole and one is also a dragonfly.
Oh yeah. And to pause Amazons really quick, the death of the mole in Amazon.
The Nozama Pest on Service. That's what their name is.
To go back to Amazon really quick, where we can talk about the mole's the final episode where he sacrificed.
Sad.
That was sad as shit. He was poisoned.
Yes.
He was poisoned
by the Mushroom Beast Man.
By the Mushroom Beast Man. Gave the poison to the doctor to make an antidote, and when they made it, he goes, "No. You need to save it in case they poison you when you fight them. Go."
Yeah.
Sad as hell. Mole was the best character.
He was the best character in the show.
Yep.
And then he died 4 episodes before the show was over.
All right.
Just like, why?
I wanted to talk about that real quick. So back to Amazons. It's this tactical team. They have a mole beast as somebody to help. And they fight and they kill the monsters. And
they work so well as a team.
Oh, God, it was great.
Those fight scenes are like the best.
With
in
the
Amazons.
With the tactical mercenaries, their teamwork was nice.
The teamwork is nice, but there's nothing about it that really grabbed me. It's just like I feel like I have seen this so many times before in other shows. It's just this time they're adding blood.
With them.
What do you mean in other shows? Like other writers?
Yeah, like other writers.
But we don't end up having that team in the other writer show. I mean, they sort of do.
You're right.
In some of the earlier ones, I mean, that's how we got G3 and G3X and G4. But we also end up getting
I know exactly why Marcus loves this show so much.
I think I can guess too.
Yeah, because after they beat off this one Spider one, they have another call where they have another Spider one, and a bat shows up, and they can't beat him because the bat's too high a level. And this.
Now, before we end up getting to that, throughout the first, throughout the episode, we do end up seeing this one guy who's, going around with these chickens and picking up their eggs and everything.
Right.
And then they go and, capture one and cook it for dinner. And at one point during the episode, when they're riding back after defeating the first spider monster...
Something drops on top of their...
Yeah, they end up putting someone rides up on a motorcycle and puts a tracer just straight on the thing, and it just drives away. And I think that was the girl.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was
You think so?
Yeah. He was his wife?
Yep.
Huh.
Is it his wife?
Lover, wife, same thing.
Something around that. But, yeah, I think just and then they end up intercepting a tracer call from them.
And so they have to fight this other spider one that's higher grade and a bat one that's even higher than that. And they're...
And such a gruesome scene. But before we get to that, we do also, and I know, I'll keep going back, but there's so much that's happening in this first episode.
Guys, I know you can't see it, but Matt is just sort of beating his head against the desk.
I just want to get my thoughts out!
But it's so much that ends up happening in this first episode because we end up meeting Haruka.
Right.
Haruka, the guy, the aquarium dude who ends up being Omega.
Yeah.
Right. And the mother.
He's sick. But,
quote unquote, sick. He's a monster.
Yeah, so they sort of keep giving him injections to keep him in control of his Amazon. the way that the Amazons end up working, the monsters end up working in the show, it was like they're already there, and apparently they were all test subjects of the Nozama pharmacy.
About 4,000 test subjects on these things called Amazon cells that are man-eating cells, and there was a accident, and all 4,000 of them escaped.
Yep.
How that happened?
And then they just set them off into the wild, and they were just like, we're going to monitor this.
And the bracelets this time are apparently medicine injectors.
Yes.
As opposed to being power bracelets to keep them at bay. But after about 2 years, it runs out of medicine, and once that happens, you're apparently fucked.
Yeah, so this whole thing happens 2 years after that. The weird thing is, Haruka doesn't have one.
No, he's injecting himself.
Yeah, he ends up injecting himself because apparently he was one of the first ones.
Alpha.
Yeah.
And
he was the alpha tester, even though he's the Omega Rider in this show. He ends up he stops taking them after
because it makes him feel art.
Yeah, it makes him feel terrible.
Right.
So he stops taking it
because he's a whiny little man child.
Sorry, for the first couple of episodes, he gets better.
I don't plan on sticking around to find out.
He ends up getting a lot stronger as the show ends up going on, because the first episode is just like, as they're fighting the spider and the bat monster, he wanders out of his house.
Yeah, and then
he's like sweating.
The mercenaries are getting their asses kicked. And all of a sudden, this guy, I think he sneaks onto their freaking van and leans onto the horn.
And one of the best entrances I have ever seen, because you can tell it's like, this guy is a complete asshole.
And this is why Marcus loves it.
You're talking about Amazon Alpha, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He loves main characters who don't give a shit. Thank you. Don't give a shit, are extremely powerful, and
Tsukasa.
and fight like they're not really trying.
Yeah.
And he does that. I like that. I do. It's hilarious. It's really cool to watch, and I did like that. But that that doesn't make a show good.
And just a little trivia bit here: this guy is a previous Sentai actor.
Really?
This is Go Blue from Go Go 5.
Sorry, he walks in, slaps the belt on because it wasn't already on. That's the first I've seen. They just carry it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that really since
They actually
Fives.
carry this huge belt around with them.
That's the thing in Fives and Kabuto.
Well, no, Kabuto they have a belt, but the belt is kind of...
It's not as big.
It's not It's also not as big.
This is like a WWE championship belt.
Yeah, this is
and
it's
just
big.
Slaps it on, and as opposed to he does with Amazon. Like, get it over.
And then just gives like this asshole smile and just clicks the button and transforms into
which is an explosion.
If you'll notice, he kind of like revs the
handlebar.
The handle kind of like Axel does.
Yeah, which I really did like. They just kind of rev it, and he's just big explosion. He becomes Amazon and barely tries, and he kicks ass. Which again, it's really cool.
I love that.
You do that, and you won Marcus's heart.
At the end of this episode,
Omega
Haruka is behind the van, and he jumps over it and transforms in midair. And this comes down as like the feral version of Amazon Omega.
Yes.
And he ends up looking a lot more like the original Amazon.
Yeah.
In
terms
of color, yes. But
in terms of
Amazon Alpha is like the original Amazon, except he's red.
Yeah, which is apparently
like a reddish pink, but with like stripes.
It's scars too. There's scars on his chest plate, and but when Omega gets his belt in the episode 2, he gets this more slick
and sleek feeling
belt. Like aerodynamic, because he's apparently very fast, and as opposed to being fins on his arms, they're just legitimate blades.
Yes.
Which I like.
Which he uses to cut somebody in half.
Which is really cool.
Speaking of which, at the end of episode 1, one of the extermination squad members, also played by our previous Sentai actor Ryoma Baba, aka Blue Buster from Go Busters, ends up apparently being an Amazon, and no one knew the entire time. He ends up transforming into a dragonfly monster. And Which
reminded me of Kamen Rider Drake so much.
Yes,
from Kabuto.
He did look like Drake a lot. He ends up taking the sniper guy out. And like just straight up just tears up his
intestines.
I was like,
and somehow he lives through this.
Yeah, we'll get to it, because that ends up happening.
We also haven't seen as far as you have, so
yeah. Alpha ends up just wrecking the spider monster. It's just like nope. All the times you try to attack him, nope, and then he just grabs your heart and takes it out, and that's the end of you.
Yep.
And then Omega ends up jumping over, and Alpha's just like, well, aren't you interesting? And just, that's the end of the first episode. And the beginning of the second episode, the bat monster ends up being there. We haven't really talked about him, but he ends up basically just wiping the entire exterminating squad, and then the dragonfly monster ends up happening. Omega comes in and just wrecks this guy, just goes straight up feral on him, rips off his wings, and just throws him, and then stomps his head in. I was like, yes, this is what I wanted.
This entire show panders to Marvel.
It does, because we haven't had, going from Ghost to this, because Ghost is just like so in some points.
Yeah.
This feels like the earlier, like, Kuga, Agito, all the way up through Kabuto. It feels like that grit is back. And I feel like we missed that grit.
Well, to quote Shinichiro Shirakura, who is the head of, he's been producing a lot of the Heisei era shows, do you think the recent Kamen Riders are interesting? I don't think so. I hope with Amazons, the toothless Kamen Rider can get his fangs back.
And he does.
He really did. Literally.
I don't entirely agree with that.
Why?
Why? Because I do think some of the recent Kamen Riders are interesting. I don't think they've been executed as well as some of the previous Heisei era Kamen Riders, but I do think there is the potential, and because Ghost is, it's not even it's a little over halfway done now. It can still be good. It can still be. I still think Ghost is an inherently interesting character.
He's not.
Well, maybe
Ghost himself, no.
Ghost himself, no, but like the whole concept
is.
But you also have to keep in mind that Kamen Rider is aimed at children.
Yeah. But this one isn't.
I know it isn't, but one of the reasons I don't like it, and I feel this way about all dark tokusatsu shows, like whether it's Garo or this or anything like that, I find it really, really difficult to take seriously because it still has some of those childish Saturday
cliches.
morning cartoon sensibilities, but it's in such a darker world, it doesn't really mesh with me, and I just find it very hard to take seriously.
I find it's a lot easier for me to take seriously because my favorite Kamen Rider, as we all know, is Kabuto. Quick second runner-up being Kuga. And they were just, even though, and I say this because of Kuga a lot more, because Kuga himself is such a lighthearted character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he always ended up fighting, to keep everyone smiling.
Yeah.
But I feel like his show itself was just so much more gritty because of the way that it was broadcast.
That's another thing. There's a difference between dark and there's a difference in gritty.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the difference can be very thin.
Yeah.
It's very easy to cross. Dark is kind of what Amazons is going for.
Yeah.
Grit was like Kabuto and Gaim.
Yeah, but I loved Gaim, and that grit that was in Gaim
was perfect.
Was perfect. I mean, you had
it was, and I think it helps because the Gaim they had Orobuchi.
That's it. I was trying to remember his name.
Orobuchi writing it because he's used to writing anime that may not be specifically targeted for a certain age group, but also still putting in that gritness that might, you
look at something like Madoka Magica, which has that guise of being
a magical
girl show, but it has that darkness to it
that makes you go, oh dear God.
Yeah, but in Madoka Magica, I'm not a big fan of the show, but I will admit it works.
Oh yeah.
In Gaim, he took that same kind of sensibilities, but it still felt like I could still see kids watching Gaim and enjoying it.
And you can still see kids.
It's also cultural sensibilities.
That's
the
true.
Japanese have very different sensibilities on what is age appropriate in terms of violence and in terms of how dark something can be. Because I mean, you look at the Fist of the North Star manga, and that's targeted at 9 to 10-year-olds, and it's one of the most violent things ever made. It's extremely violent.
I think the point of Amazons is just to say we can still make a decent, violent Kamen Rider,
like an actual drama.
Like
that's a lot of the thing that I don't like about the more modern Sentai, like excluding Gaim. It's like basically everyone I know knows I hate Forza. I don't like when shows are too comedic. And
there's a level.
Yeah, there's like a level. And Forza really goes over that. I feel like O's was a good balance. W was a good balance.
True enough, but Forza was also set entirely in high school, and it was it's still aimed at a younger audience, so I can understand why they did that.
At the beginning.
So is Hibiki at the beginning, and so is Mega Ranger. And
I can't wait until we get to that show.
But you also remember, there's a stereotype with high schools.
Right. Especially
teenagers are dicks. Period.
It's like Haruka's that age.
Haruka's that age. And if I recall, there is a scene where Haruka is trying to call her mother,
his mother.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
It's the hair.
No, I'm getting characters mixed up. The daughter.
Yeah.
Where she's trying to call her mother, and these 3 girls walk up going, "That's a really shitty strap. If you tell anybody what we did, we'll kill you." And then walk off.
Yeah.
High school is dark.
But it's just like, I don't like Forza, and I think that's what sort of pushed me off.
Because it was so... Friendship is power.
Yeah.
It was freaking...
We'll get to that on another episode.
But the point is that going to Amazon's, it was just this... I don't want to say prototype, because it's not, but it just this reimagining of what they used to do and how it could still work.
Well, like Shirakura said, he wants the toothless Kamen Rider to get his fangs back. He wants that. He wants
metaphorical and literal sense when you think about it.
He wants that more kid-friendly aesthetic that they've drifted more and more towards as the Heisei era has gone on.
They just wanted that gone.
Not necessarily they want it gone because Ghost is still a thing that they're doing, but they want to show that they still have the potential to make it available for an older audience who is used to that darkness and who people like you who really like that.
I feel like it's like going from Kuga to Kabuto, it's like that was more family oriented instead of being more kid oriented. Like
because that was also back in
that makes sense.
It was also back in times where kids didn't watch television alone.
Yeah.
As opposed to nowadays, where kids will just lock their doors and watch whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like those.
It's all on their phone.
Exactly.
It's like, that's Kuga, Agito, Ryuki,
Ryuki especially.
Blade, and Hibiki and Kabuto. It's like those shows
it's
are
like,
just like extremely
I hate to make this comparison. It's like the dirty adult jokes in Disney movies.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that are for the parents that are stuck watching it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, because I remember looking on some boards like Justice and things like that. Like, they had those, they have the demographic list and everything that shows who's watching what. It's like, especially with Hibiki, and a lot of mothers ended up watching Hibiki. Guess why? Because of that main writer. They thought he was extremely attractive.
And then guess what happened? They realized that Hibiki was scaring their kids. They wrote to Toei, and they're like, change everything.
Yeah, and that's how we got the second half of Hibiki.
Uh-huh.
But it's just like...
But Amazon's, I feel like, is another idea that's really good on paper, but in my opinion, the execution could be better.
I agree.
I just love
I am bored. That's my problem.
I'm also bored.
I'm bored because...
It's not that it's dark. I love dark things. I love grit. I love that kind of stuff. But it's not executed in a way that I can really take this world seriously. It's not grounded in a way that I can really get on.
It also doesn't help that when you have way too many questions.
Yeah.
Then you have
facts.
It's
really hard to follow for the first couple of episodes.
Since I'm on episode
because there's
5
so
now,
many characters.
It's just like those characters start getting whittled down a lot more.
Which I guess would help, but I'm talking about in terms of the world they're in, the plot that's going on, the backstory behind some of these characters. There are just so many questions that I'm just sitting there going, what's going on?
And I'm sure they'll be answered with time. At least I hope they will.
Yeah, because in episode 5,
for people if you do, I will say I am going to recommend you watch this.
Oh, absolutely.
To the listeners, I absolutely recommend watching this. Because you never know, you might not like it, you might not. It's up for you to decide. But I forgot what I was going to say. Dang it! Keep going with what you were thinking.
Absolutely watch it, but it's not something that particularly pertains to what I enjoy in a show.
Right.
But again, it's not that it's bad. I absolutely loved Alpha. He's the type of main character that some Kamen Riders need. The one who
we haven't gotten that character
shit done
in years. We haven't gotten a character like that
probably
since Tsukasa. We haven't gotten a character like Alpha since Tsukasa. It's Decade.
Yeah.
And that's a decade.
You kept saying Tsukasa. I'm like, Tsukasa, isn't that Decade?
Yeah.
Why not just say Decade?
We haven't gotten that character who's just like so good since Decade. And that I hate the fact that we've gotten sort of this archetype. I mean, it's been broken. We had, Drive being a police officer. But I feel like, especially coming from Ghost to this on a week-by-week basis now, I love the characters in Amazon so much more than I do in Ghost. I don't dislike any of the side characters.
I think it also helps, like, Alpha is a legitimate adult, as opposed to Ghost being an 18-year-old.
Yeah. He's also the youngest Kamen Rider ever, so...
No, he's not.
Well, as far as the actor goes.
Forze still.
No.
Forze was still younger.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
They look that up to determine who's right on this because that's all they do nowadays.
Oh, he was the previous one. Forze was the previous youngest.
Yes.
Amazon, if you want to watch it, go ahead. It's completely up to you. I wouldn't recommend Amazon.
I love this show.
Amazon?
Amazon.
Okay, Zon.
Amazon. I would say you don't have to watch it. If you don't. Amazon's, absolutely watch it because it's something that's different. It's something that hopefully is continued in the main Kamen Rider series.
I hope it's something that we end up getting because after Amazon, I mean, this show is only supposed to go for 13 episodes, but the way that they're titling the episodes, each episode starts with, the letter of the alphabet. Like, for example, one starts with A, two is B, and so on and so forth. But it's just like, I hope that we do in the 26. Especially with a show like this, just because I missed just having this. Because I did not, and I'm going to get so flamed for this, I did not like Den-O that much.
I didn't either.
I didn't like Den-O that much.
I didn't like Den-O either.
Kiva had so many problems.
Kiva did have a lot of problems.
I liked Kiva at first, and then I got tired of it.
Yeah,
Den-O,
I'm the same way.
Den-O, I did not like that much either, so you won't get any from me.
It's like, I haven't liked the Kamen Rider this much since Gaim, and I feel like that's sort of a problem. Drive...
I love Drive.
Drive, don't get me wrong, it was good, but it's just like going from Gaim to Drive.
Which,
it felt like a drop off.
It's a bit of a shift.
That's just unfair to Drive, though.
Yeah,
if you put Drive out, if you swap Drive and Ghost, Drive would have been so much better.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately Gaim was just.
But if you went from Gaim to Ghost, that'd be an even more drastic shift.
Yeah. It's just unfortunately it was a hard act to follow. But Amazon's as of right now, I'm giving it maybe 6 out of 10.
Speaking of Amazons and the fact that we sort of keep bringing up O's a little bit, there is a character that you will recognize. Dr. Maki is in this show.
Really?
Dr. Maki plays in this show. And I love the fact that it's just like, wow. I like his character.
Who is he in the show?
He plays the other guy working at Nozama Pharmacy.
Okay.
Oh.
Is
that the one that always holds the napkin up to his face?
No, that's not him. He's another character that you haven't gotten to yet. I love that there's this one scene where they're in the boardroom and Haruka's mother, who's like one of the top CEOs at Nozama Pharmacy, is talking.
Yeah.
And Haruka just comes in and is like, "Why did you not tell me anything? Like, what the hell is going on right now? Why am I transforming into this thing?" Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, "You need to go and help the extermination squad." And Haruka's sort of I call him, bitch syndrome.
Yeah.
Because he sort of just ends up following whatever anybody tells him. And they all end up witnessing.
Which is an unfortunate thing that most, and I'm going to say the secondary writers go through as bitch syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ghost is also going through the same thing.
Yeah.
No, but except Ghost is getting bitch syndrome as opposed to Spectre.
That's true. That's extreme. Well, now it's just Necron, but
anyway,
that's for another episode.
Yeah, but I really, really, really like Amazons, and I suggest that just go watch the hell out of it. It's the fact that it's a lot longer. Well, I'm not saying
every episode is 44 minutes.
No, only the first couple. It's like the first.
Yeah, episode 3 was like 32.
Yeah, it's like and then it went down to like 29 in episode 5, and then now it's back to 34 again.
Yeah,
it's still longer.
It is still longer.
And I get the feel, because of the fact that it's still longer, I feel like we get so much. A lot more is in an episode than what we got in like Ghost, because essentially, and I will say this especially, this goes for every single show writer. The problem that I have with a lot of the more recent writers is the fact that we get so many forms, and Ghost is so bad with these. And that's just something I'm really appreciating.
Toys, and more toys.
I'm really appreciating that a lot more in Amazon, because it's just, we got Alpha, and then we got,
Omega.
the Feral Omega, and then the actual Omega.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's it. We don't end up getting a whole bunch of extra stuff. Although there was that one part, and I'm so upset.
And they don't each have 800 finishers.
Yeah, well, sort of. They have
Amazon's really isn't about the big finishers. It's just about the let's kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my point. There's not like 800 different ways that they can say a phrase and then activate a finisher.
Yeah, it's like they just have violent punish, and then they just kill something. Or Amazon, like apparently Omega has a freaking spear, in
his belt. Yeah,
and
he
takes
pulls
that
the
thing out.
So that handles henshin. The other handle he just spear stab.
Yeah, like the spear just like
or his arm blades get longer and he can cut a guy in half.
Yep. There's this one
or in half.
I think it was episode
in half.
4. Yeah, it was episode 4 when they're fighting inside the gigantic apartment building.
Yeah, with all the ants.
And and I think it was at the beginning of 5 where he just takes that spear out and like just stabs 5 of them straight through. And I'm seeing.
I saw that scene.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
I just miss that.
Marcus is so excited right now.
He's literally shaking.
I just wish that.
What you want is a Kamen Rider that's more like the video games.
No, I want a Kamen Rider who's more like Kuga than Ghost.
He just wants Kuga again.
Kuga's a great show though.
Yeah,
but
I just miss it, and I wish.
To all of our listeners, we apologize for going on so many tangents.
We are sorry.
But we hope you still enjoyed listening. Please tune in next time for Changeman.
Yep, we are doing Dengeki Sentai Changeman.
One of Marcus's favorites, and the Tokusatsu News Network for posting our 4th episode on their Facebook page. We really appreciate your help, and we're really glad. But as always, thank you again for listening to the Tokucast. Mm-hmm. Like and subscribe.
Join us on May 21st for episode 6.
For Changeman.
Yep.
Change motherfucking Griffon.
This is the Tokucast, episode 5, signing off. Bye.
Bye.